This is different. Hi and welcome to the latest episode of Cheesy Buys, your semi-consistent content delivery vehicle for semi-interesting tech items such as today's entry, which features the NuPhy Air 96. Now, if you're a regular viewer, you may know that I have covered the other two Airs as well, that is the 75 and the 60, which might make you wonder why I bother with the Air 96. Isn't it just a bigger version of the other two? Well, yes, but also no.
Speak, priest!
From the outside, it may appear as such, but they are different in more ways than you might initially think, so sit back and enjoy this comprehensive comparison and review of the Air 96. Or not, because, well, I can't force you to watch this.
You know what's best.
Before we get into the nitty-gritty, just in case you've never heard of the Air series, let me run down some basics. Feel free to skip to the next chapter if you're really familiar or if you have watched any of my other videos. The original Air launched back in 2021 and was one of the first boards I covered on this channel, made by NuPhy, who had until then only one other board under their belt, the F1, which has since been discontinued. The Air series, as the name suggests, focus on a compact, light form factor while still giving you plenty of features such as hot swap switches, custom keycaps, and a comprehensive layout for maximum options in a minimum package. All of the boards are also fully equipped with rainbow vomit and feature tasteful light strips at the end here to showcase battery or connection statuses, as well as your choice of color or animation to match your personality. Or if you're like me and don't have one, you can also turn it off. If you do choose to highlight your individuality, there are a lot of RGB presets to cycle through, and I really mean a lot, but if you want a detailed look at that, I'd recommend you watch one of my other videos on the Air series. They also feature your standard connection modes, that is 3 Bluetooth profiles, which means you can connect to 3 different devices and switch between them using a key combination, as well as a single 2.4 GHz mode via the included dongle. Of course, you can also operate the board using the included braided cable or just use it to charge the 4000 mAh battery, which should last you quite a while. However, I must note that I didn't use the board long enough to be able to give you any indication of its true endurance, but NuPhy states that it should be good for about 25 to 55 hours with RGB and up to 300 hours if you have the personality of a brick. Functionality-wise, there isn't much to discuss here, not that there's a lack of it, it's just standard at this point. You have a dedicated Windows and Mac switch right here at the back, and you can activate or deactivate the sleep mode via a short key combo, which will set the board to turn off after 6 minutes of inactivity. This is about the average time it takes before somebody falls asleep during a boring YouTube video. Which reminds me...
Hey, you're finally awake.
Anyhow, there are other software configurations one can undertake, such as flipping the F-rows with MIDI controls and vice versa, or you can reset the entire board in case you made a bit of a mess. There's also NuPhy Console, which is their proprietary software suite. Everything you can set via key combos can also be done there and more. For example, there is a hidden game mode that you otherwise can't activate, but just like the other functionality, not a lot has changed here since last time, so I'd again recommend you watch my Air 60 video where I go a little bit more in depth on this, and this should pretty much cover the basics. Now, let's get to the interesting stuff. You'd be forgiven if you'd pass by the Air 96 and dismiss it as just a size bump, and even if we look at the Air 60 right next to it, you might wonder, what's the difference? If you start inspecting the details, you might notice that the keycaps have a slightly different hue. That's because the Air 96 has all new double shot PBT caps. That's right, gone are the days of wobbly legends. These caps are pristine and look fantastic. They are much sharper and little skinnier than before, but make the board just look a tad bit more elegant than its predecessor. This applies to all keycaps, even the multimedia controls, which unfortunately means you also lose the second color of the sub-legends, which I did like. But overall, this is a positive improvement and is also much closer to the original render than was previously shipped. Maybe this was always the dream but couldn't be done due to manufacturing limitations or more likely cost-saving measurements. Whatever the case may be, it's a great upgrade, and apart from the A key here, which is a little skinnier than all the rest of the keys, I think this is a great upgrade. I also wish that NuPhy would sell these separately or add them to the Air 60 and 75, as well as update the other keycaps in their arsenal, which all still feature die sub-legends. But then again, the last time I said I wish NuPhy, by the time the video was published, they actually did it, which was with the spacebar. So who knows, maybe by the time this video goes up, you can already buy these separately. If you take a step back again, you may be able to spot the second difference. I'm not sure how well the camera and later the YouTube compression will allow this to come through, but the top housing on the 96 has just an ever so slightly darker shade of grey. But it doesn't stop there, the edges are slightly sharper too and less chamfered than on the 60. Taking an even closer look at this with my trusty caliper, we can measure and see that surprisingly the 96 is actually slimmer. It's not enough to make any difference in feel or ergonomics, but it is noticeable when you place the boards next to each other. Why that is, I don't know, but as you'll see later, there are a lot more changes under the hood as well. But before we get there, let's flip this thing around to reveal flip out feet. That's right, one of my earlier complaints about the Air has finally been addressed. Now, if you don't remember, the original had these magnetic feet to pop up the board for a higher tapping angle. I like the idea, but the implementation always seemed to contradict the mobility factor. If you were meant to take these with you, they always seem to be at high risk to be left in a backpack or worse in a coffee shop or wherever the cool kids these days do their riding. And the included or optional carrying case, as cool as it was or is, didn't have an option to place these or store these feet when you took the board with you. Apart from being attached to the board and therefore impossible to lose, the flip-out feet also have the benefit of having 2 levels instead of just one that we had with the magnetic feet. However, I will say one thing. There was a comment not too long ago with a good point that I didn't think about. The magnetic feet are much easier to replace if they get lost. The flip-out feet, in case they break, well, it's a bit of a tricky situation down there, since they're, well, technically much more complex. I still prefer them, but it's a valid point and something to think about. Now, if we continue to look at the back, we can also see that the case is slightly more transparent than on the original 60, which means that the RGB is just ever so slightly more visible. Another detail are the rubber feet. On the original, these were very thin, as you can see here. And sometimes, or at least I think sometimes, they would start to come loose, as they are glued in. Now, I think this was a known issue. Because NuPhy does ship the R60 with a set of replacement rubber feet. Now, this no longer is the case with the R96. That's because the feet have a much wider base, as you can see here. This isn't really a revolutionary thing, but you could say it's an evolutionary thing, and just a little bit more present, still retaining the same thin and, well, arguably good look, while just being a little bit more long-lasting, or at least I hope so. One last detail on the backside I'd like to mention is the middle black foot here. It's a tiny detail, but one that I really appreciate. As the board is wider, it also needs additional support in the middle, and in order to keep the aesthetics as close to its smaller siblings as possible, they made it black. Now, nobody would have cared. Nobody would have even noticed, but the fact that they went the extra mile just for this small detail is something that I really like. Even if the middle foot would also be in this teal color, I wouldn't have considered to be wrong. I mean, I would have just assumed that this is, how the feet would look like. It would look good, but they wanted to have this 4 feet arrangement and hide the middle one. Again, this is a detail that nobody would have cared, but they went the extra mile and, well, I really like that. Alright, I think that covers all of the outside. Now it's time to dig in. First, we gotta remove all the keycaps and screws. These switches don't need to go if you just want to take the board apart, but since we're gonna go in deeper, I'll just remove them as well. We're gonna be using this keycap and switch puller, which came with the original R75, and obviously you also get one when you buy the R96. And it's something that comes in quite handy when you play around with switches and keycaps. In general, NuPhy ships a lot of extra bits when you buy one of their boards, and apart from the extra switches that you get, which let you try out some of their other offerings, the R96 also had something else that at least I didn't have with any of my other 2 boards, and that is a little dongle holder for, well, the 2.4 GHz dongle, which is an interesting concept that you can attach basically to the cable to not lose it. Now, if I have one suggestion for the future iteration of one of their boards, it is to maybe include or add a little cavity to hold the dongle. Anyway, let's flip this thing around and start taking it apart. Once all the keycaps and switches are removed, it's time to separate the top and bottom half of the board. For this, you first need to remove the 4 screws at the top and the 5 screws at the bottom. Now it's time to separate the bottom plastic bit from the top aluminum one. The best way is, once again, if you have something small and soft to pry it open. I'm going to be using this iFixit pick that, well, I use in almost everything. There's no apparent gap anywhere to get in, but you can get an opening if you push it from the inside around the spacebar area. And once you get it in, oh, lost it there. Once you get it in, you just slide it across the entire board. And you should hear, ever so slightly, the little clasps opening up. Once you've done that, as usual with these kinds of boards, just beware of the ribbon cable that attaches to the battery when you open up the bottom half. In this case, it's at the top half of the board in this case. You can see here, hopefully. That's where the cable is. There we go. Once separated, we can have a closer look, at which point we might think that there's not that much of a difference again. The only change is the larger battery, which also includes a protective cover now. There's also a lack of a daughter board. Now, I was never able to open up my Air 75, so I don't know how that thing looks from the inside, but the 60 had a separate PCB for the USB-C port, as well as the switches. Having a daughter board and not having one is probably down to design. There's little to do with improvement, but it is still a noticeable difference. Of course, we also don't have the magnets that would otherwise be here to attach to the feet. Now we have, of course, the flip-out feet, which we took a look at before, and this is how they look on the inside. Now let's put our attention to the upper half. First, let's remove some additional screws that hold in the PCB. There's a total of 8 screws holding in the PCB and the top part of the board. Once removed, let's get this out of the way a little bit, you can simply lift out the PCB, and this is where it gets a little interesting for the first time around. I would have never thought about this, since low profile boards usually aren't tinkered with much, if at all, but here we are again, where NuPhy kind of went the extra mile and added a layer of, I don't know, plate foam and PCB foam. Pretty cool, actually. Oh, this is actually stuck or glued into the corner for some reason, but it is there. One oddity is that there was even foam inside of the switches at the back here. As you can see here, there is a tiny amount of foam inside of the switches. I'm not sure if this has any acoustic benefits, or maybe it's just for the feel that the switch doesn't rattle around too much. I don't know, but it is there, and it is a little bit weird. What did you think? Was it worth for NuPhy to add these 2 layers? Whatever the case may be, I think collectively, all the changes they've done, especially the updated keycaps, address a lot of the points I had in my original video. This makes the already great Air series even better, at least this size, and I really love how NuPhy didn't just recycle everything but actually improve the board with this bigger iteration. Most will probably never notice all these changes too, and the board didn't get a price hike either. I mean, it's $10 more, but I would account that for the size increase, not the improved quality and keycaps. So in the end, I would say, very well done, NuPhy. Very well done. But there's one more thing that they themselves probably never even noticed. You probably didn't notice either. If you flip the NuPhy R96 on its head, well, a secret is revealed, the true reason why this board is vastly superior to any of its predecessors. One reason that makes this board even better in every way possible. All jokes aside, this is a really good low-profile mechanical keyboard, definitely worth a look if you're shopping around for one of these. Also thanks to NuPhy for sending me this board. They had no say in this video and I'm not being paid by them, but their support for the channel is appreciated. And of course, thank you for watching this video. I hope this was a fun watch and see you in the next one. Bye bye.